All right. First rule of this channel, we do not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So welcome to After Waivers for week 15. This is the proactive waiver wire video. So hopefully if you're listening to this, you made your playoffs and you're, getting your roster and your lineup ready to go win your chip. So one of the things I want to talk about before I get into this a little bit is the idea of risk and reward, and then those juggernaut lineups. When I have won my leagues, I have usually been able to put together like this juggernaut team that I have felt very confident that I'm going to go win. And I don't think I've ever lost a league when I put together a lineup that just had like everybody in the top 10 for their position. On the other side, like the teams that I've actually enjoyed, managing throughout the year have been the ones that I haven't been able to put together those juggernaut lineups, and I have to figure out ways to score points on a week to week basis, and that usually means throwing guys out there that are literal, not the normal type guys, trying to get the upside, maximize the upside, or even some weeks like just trying to get a 40-degree day because I know that the other guys could maybe get me there if I could just not have one guy in my lineup screw up. So like that's kind of what you got to be looking at with your lineup going into your playoffs is, what are the realistic expectations I have with this team, versus the guys I'm going up against, and how much I have to make those moves that are non-conventional to try and win my league. Because again, the same process that'll win me my league will lose me my league, because I have to be able to risk in order to win it. Otherwise I'm just waiting for somebody else to hopefully hand me the title, and that just never happens. So anyway, I talked about a lot of guys yesterday in the Chasing the Dragon video. I'll probably go over a little bit more today, but if you want those off the cuff thoughts, like go ahead and check that video out. Guys like Kareem Hunt and Pierre Strong, checking out Jerome Ford injury, the B Rob injury with Antonio Gibson and Rodriguez, Zay Jones. We have, let's see, Zamir White and Amir Abdullah for the Raiders with a potential Josh Jacobs injury. Noah Brown for the Texans with the potential of a Nico Collins injury, and then OBJ and Rashad Bateman for the Ravens coming out of this week. And then Deontay Foreman, if he's available, Curtis Samuel, guys like Isaiah Likely, some of those guys. I talked about some of those guys yesterday. So first thing first, we're going to look at the overall playoffs, how that's going to look out in real life land. So the Ravens are the 1 seed. I know someone yesterday asked me how long I'm going to be doing the channel for the rest of the year. They have like week 18 chips. I don't know if I'm going to be doing dedicated week 18 videos, but I would be thinking about doing something those weeks to finish the season off, to kind of break down how the season went for everybody. But if you're in week 17 chips, because of how the NFL's playoffs are set up, where the number 1 seed gets a bye, and then after that it's like the other teams have less to play for. You have to be aware that some of these teams can start shutting down if they start clinching things early, if they don't have anything to play for. So that's something to be aware of. There was a possibility, I think it was last year, that the Eagles might run away with it, and then they were already talking about the other teams shutting down, like the Cowboys wouldn't have anything to play for. So just be aware of those things in the next couple of weeks, depending how it shakes out. I don't think right now we're going to have that problem, but it was a problem last year, to be aware of. So anyway, the Ravens are the 1 seed. The Dolphins got knocked off last night. They go to the 2 seed. The Chiefs are kind of faltering right now. I don't think that the Broncos are going to be able to catch them, but like that's going to be a little bit more interesting than we thought. The Jaguars are okay. I definitely see that they're going to be able to hold off the Colts and the Texans at this point. Cleveland, they got the win. They found Joe Flacco. That's how it's going to go. I still don't think the Steelers will make the playoffs. I think the Colts and the Texans have a shot. Even the Broncos, and then the Bengals with Jake Browning, and then the Bills are still going to be hanging around there. After that, I think it gets pretty ugly really fast. The Chargers are probably going to shut it down with the news that Justin Herbert's on IR. I could definitely see the Raiders are going to play this out because of Antonio Gibson and the rookie quarterback Aiden O'Connell. The Jets, there's some interesting stuff going on with the Aaron Jones or Aaron Rodgers there, and then Tennessee's going to see what they have in Will Levis, and then who knows what's going on with the Patriots. You can see that they've already been eliminated for the playoffs. So in the NFC, you have the 49ers and the Cowboys. Those are the 2 teams I think are most likely to get the 1 seed overall. The Detroit Lions are 3, Tampa Bay is 4, and you got to remember the Tampa Bay and the Falcons and the Saints are all battling for that 4 seed. even though it looks a little bit more likely they have a chance to backdoor into the playoffs in that 7-6 seed type range. Eagles are the 5 seed. That's probably going to be a lock unless they can catch up to the Cowboys somehow, some way. But those are the 3 or 2 or 3 Super Bowl contenders for the NFC right now. Minnesota's going to be all over the place to finish the season off. Being 7-6 and then having your third start or fourth starting quarterback of the year is going to be tough. Green Bay Packers, I thought they were going to be good. Then they went out and they lost to the Giants, the legend of Tommy DeVito. The Rams are going to be okay, and Seahawks should be okay, even though they can't buy a break. And then those are the other 2 teams we're talking about. I guess theoretically, when you look at this now, the Giants and the Bears are in contention for that 7th seed, because the 7th seed right now is held by the Green Bay Packers, and they're 6-7. So the Giants and the Bears are still in contention. And then the Commanders, like, all they need to know is whether or not Sam Howell's the guy. The Cardinals just need to know what they're going to do with Kyler Murray. And then Carolina just needs to not be a dumpster fire by the end of the season. So that's kind of what we're looking at overall. If you get an idea of, like, when we start talking about some of the strategies, it's going to be whether or not these teams can what they need to look at, and what they need to, they're going to be throwing guys out there to either win or to see what they have. So, like, a guy like Jonathan Mingo, like, it doesn't matter what you think about him. He's going to get this absurd opportunity because they need to know if they need to go another direction by the end of the year. All right. So the schedule this week, we'll go over the defenses really quick. If Max Crosby's out for the Raiders on Thursday night, never trust Thursday Night Football, that would probably downgrade him for me. But, like, it's an okay-ish defense, to not good to not bad type range going up against the Chargers and their backup quarterback. So that's always probably a good role. Excuse me. The Bengals and the Vikings. I probably wouldn't trust this game at all either way. Jake Browning and Minnesota, I just wouldn't trust rolling out either of these defenses, regardless of what the tea leaves say. The Colts, I think, are a pretty good play against the Mitch Trubisky. He can be a turnover machine. I wouldn't be trusting this Detroit Denver game one way or another, so I just wouldn't be rolling guys out. Chicago and the Browns. Regardless of what the Chicago tea leaves say, they have looked like a lot better as a defense. I don't think that Cleveland necessarily has to be aggressive as an offense. They can play really conservatively. So you're hoping that, like, Joe Flacco, chasing sacks equals turnovers. They just may not be the opportunities in this game, regardless of if normally I would say, yeah, this is a good to go. If this was some of the other Browns quarterbacks, I would probably be a little bit more happy to be rolling these guys out. But I just think overall it's not going to be that type of game. Let's see. Houston and Tennessee. After last week, I probably would be less inclined to be rolling these guys out as I take my headset off. Hoping that Tennessee or Houston was going to have a good matchup against the Jets. That just didn't happen. And then at this point in the playoffs, like, you're looking for things that you can predict. And if you can't predict the matchup, like, I just wouldn't be taking the risk at this point. Tennessee, on the other hand, I think after what they did to the Dolphins, I think I would be a little bit more likely to want to roll them out against Houston. And this is the big asterisk next to this, for an after waiver show. If CJ Stroud is not active and it's David Mills, I think Tennessee is definitely upgraded. Tennessee does have a good defensive line, and that would mean that if it kind of, is a game that I can kind of predict, that would be one that I would be a little bit more I would feel a little bit better streaming the Tennessee defense against Houston with CJ Stroud out. And it's kind of the same idea with Cleveland. If I have Cleveland and they are going up against the Bears, I probably would be rolling them out. But again, like, when it comes to overall matchups, are they available? That's like one of the first things that I have to look at. I could probably get Chicago, but maybe the tea leaves say, like, it's a worse situation in Houston that it's going to be rolling the Bears out against Joe Flacco. If that makes any sense. Kansas City, I still think they may be the number one overall defensive play this week against New England. And there's still sneaky appeal if you're in, like, a really deep league to be rolling out the New England defense against KC, believe that or not. The KC offense has been inconsistent this year, and New England has been stingy. The Giants and New England, I think both these are okay plays against each other. I just wouldn't trust it again if you're playing for that upside, that risk reward. I just don't think either of them are really there. I do like the Falcons. They're probably, like, maybe in the number 2 overall streaming defense off the top of my head. Against the Panthers, the Saints really roughed up the Panthers last week, and the Falcons are not a bad defense. I'm saying no to the Redskins. The Rams are okay in this situation. Sam Howell can be a little bit of a turnover machine, sack magnet. So like this is not a bad situation. And if the Rams can put the score up, they're going to put that negative game script on the Redskins, and that means like sacks, turnovers. So there's a little bit of sneaky appeal there. It's just that overall the Rams defense is not necessarily good. Obviously, I'm rolling out the 49ers against the Cardinals, and there's no way I would be rolling out the Cardinals against the 49ers. Cowboys are going to be a weekly start regardless of matchups, and Josh Allen is a turnover machine. I wouldn't be rolling the Buffalo Bills out about against the Dallas Cowboys at this rate. Jacksonville, probably not a good role against Baltimore. Baltimore probably an okay role against Jacksonville. Jacksonville's not necessarily a great offense. They've been inconsistent, and Baltimore could be a weekly start. Again, you have to gauge that idea of whether or not you want the upside for the Ravens or excuse me, the safe floor play for the Ravens, or you want to go someplace else and try and chase that upside in a better overall matchup. Philadelphia against Seattle, I don't think that's necessarily a bad play, but the Eagles defense hasn't been particularly good. But I do think that Seattle does have a sneaky appeal against the Eagles. Jalen Hurts coming off a down game against the Cowboys last week, and he is a little bit of a turnover machine. So again, in deeper leagues, if you're looking for that appeal play, it would be Seattle, even though their defense has been a little disappointing. All right, moving on. I think this is where we go to my news and my notes. So there's nothing to talk about when it comes to the 49ers overall, or there actually is. It's basically the same news as always. Like Brock Purdy's fine, CMC's a unicorn, and Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle will probably either win your league or lose your league. They can kind of cannibalize each other a little bit. So overall, the news, if you're a McCaffrey owner, and this is pretty much only for McCaffrey owners out there in fantasy land. Elijah Mitchell may be able to play week 15. Last week with him out, it was Jordan Mason was the only real running back of consequence, did come in, vulture touchdown. The reason why I bring this up is like, if McCaffrey goes down, Eli Mitchell may not be the cuff, and you kind of have to gauge what it's going to look like. Even if McCaffrey goes down, you have the problem of how much of that role you're going to get with Elijah Mitchell coming in, how healthy he's going to be, what direction the offense is going to go in. And at this point, like that roster spot may be better used in other ways. This is up to you than trying to roll or keep a hold of Elijah Mitchell when even if you get snake bit with a CMC injury, like it may not matter. Elijah Mitchell may not be able to help you out. And the guy in that case that could happen if there is an actual injury, it may actually be Jordan Mason. So you may have this roster spot that like you could play it really safe with. You could be a little bit more aggressive with. Again, that's your decision. Same way you're going to win your league, you're going to lose your league when it comes to that. I already talked about the San Francisco defense at Arizona, so we'll move on. The Bears, Justin Fields, 19 of 33, 223, a touchdown. They go along with 12 for 58 and a tug. Again, he's going to be a very solid quarterback going into playoffs. So if you have him, you should be relatively happy about that. I want to just check out the Bears schedule. Cleveland, I would still probably be rolling them out. This would be one of those things that, and we're going to talk about this a lot today with matchups. Would I be rolling Justin Fields out against the Cleveland defense? Well, yeah, because I'm not just going after the high volume, passing. I'm chasing touchdowns, and I think he can get me home either way. So it's just a matter of like, am I going to get a 40-degree day, or am I going to get like a league-winning week? I think I can have my expectations muted. But again, it's like, who would I be replacing him with? I think there are other guys that we're going to talk about are a little bit more worrisome than Justin Fields that could theoretically just get me a passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown and not have a lot of yardage behind it and still be able to get me through to the next week going on. All right, so the big news when it comes to the Bears overall is that Roschon was at 28% snaps and 1 for 6 on the ground. Khalil Herbert was at 17% snaps, and he was at 3 for 8 on the ground. And then the guy who led the backfield was Deontay Foreman at 55% snaps, 11 for 50, and 3 for 2 for 22. So here's my breakdown of it. Like, I just wouldn't trust this backfield. It could be Foreman's backfield, but I could also get burned by rolling him out. If the coaches are right and they're just trying to go like, who's the hot hand, who's the best player in the situation, you're not going to know that on Sunday. So like, your best guess is as good as mine when it comes to that. Let's see. I don't know. I'm trying to read my notes. I don't know what they're doing because short of developing Fields, and they're just trying to put the best player on the field, and that might be in their mind Deontay Foreman. I don't know. remember Deontay Foreman is not under contract next year. Khalil Herbert and Roshan are. So whatever they're up to, and at this point, like we just talked about, like they do have a backdoor chance to get into the playoffs. So that's something else to be paying attention to with how they're going to be rolling for the rest of the year. From an overall fantasy perspective, for redraft, maybe if Deontay Foreman's available, I would be stashing him. I don't know how much I'd be rolling him out. And again, the idea behind this would probably be more, am I more worried that he's going to score 2 touchdowns on someone else's lineup in a desperation play than in my lineup where I can't predict it? Maybe, if I have a dart throw and from a flex position, maybe I could roll out your Deontay Foreman. Maybe that's in the range of outcomes. Maybe I can wait another week and see how the backfield shakes out, and I'll feel better in the semis if I get there, something along those lines. But that would be kind of my thought process behind it. Overall spending money, like this is a similar situation to like when I talked about with Zeke last week. I'm not interested in these things because I can't predict them, and it's just me flinging dirt on the wall and hoping it sticks. So like I just don't know how much I really like doing that outside of these like lower cost wide receiver 3 type dart throws, because like, if I have to go spend like 20 to 50% of my fab with Deontay Foreman, the only thing about that right now with the fantasy playoffs is if I have the money left, like again, I can't take it home with me, so I have to be able to think ahead, look at my opponent's roster, see if he would be even trying to do this desperation play with Foreman, or do I have to take this desperation play? Again, you're looking at something in the line of like 10 to 20 touches for Foreman. Probably not going to get a lot of the red zone carries at this point. That's probably going to go to Fields and limited amount of opportunity to score touchdowns, because Fields would also be the number one guy that would be throwing the ball like a Cole Kmet or something like that. But that's up for you to decide. That's just how I kind of see it. DJ Moore had 10 targets. Cole Kmet had 7 targets. Again, if I'm looking at DJ Moore right now, I'm like, hey, I got a wide receiver 1 as long as Justin Fields is there. Cole Kmet, is as good as anybody else when it comes to his ability to score touchdowns attached to Justin Fields. Justin Fields does seem to like to look him up in the red zone, so I would be rolling him out, even against like your upper tier guys, like a Kelsey. And I already talked about their defense. I think overall, this week is going to be a little rough when it comes to trying to chase the predictability of this matchup. Again, I'm trying to chase points. I want sacks. I want turnovers. Maybe Joe Flacco's a little bit of a turnover machine. Maybe he's a little bit of a sack machine, but I can't even guarantee how the offensive flow is going to go with both teams. So it might be a slower pace game. There are worse roles than the Chicago Bears, but there are also better roles, I think, from a predictability standpoint. All right, moving on to the Bengals with good old Jake Browning. So this is an interesting situation with him. I think he is probably the top streamer right now. I might even have to roll him out in my high school league because I have CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud's in the concussion protocol. The Minnesota game, I think, is going to be very non-predictive, just like with the Pittsburgh game. KC, again, their defense has been in that okay to good category. So like I wouldn't necessarily be expecting a lot from Jake Browning. But at this point, you're rolling out a guy. It looks like he's competent at playing the position, and that goes along with having a lot of toys. So he should be relatively safe floor. And if you're wondering, he did leave the game. He says it was because of cramps, and he needs to hydrate better. So that makes me feel a little bit better. But again, like from an overall upside standpoint, these next 3 games are really kind of concerning me if I have to go chase those points. Joe Mixon was at 63% snaps, 21 for 79 and a touchdown, another 4 for 3 for 46. Travion Williams was down to 2%, and he only had like 1 target, 1 reception for -1 yard. So Chase Brown is going to be the handcuff at this point. 30% snaps, 8 for 25, another 3 for 3 for 80 and a touchdown in the passing game. And at this point, not only if I would be very aggressive if I was the Mixon owner towards cuffing with Chase Brown if Mixon goes down. But the other thing that I would be looking at if I wasn't the Mixon owner, or shouldn't even say that, if I was the Mixon owner, I would also be concerned with the snap share going into the playoffs, that it could end up being more of a 50-50 opportunity split between the 2 players. And on top of that, like Chase Brown is now going to be in that Tajay Spears type of, if there's an injury, this is a league winner. He's going to probably get the bell cow work on, something of an okay offense. So like this would be a guy that I would be a little bit more aggressive on from at least from a block standpoint versus trying to throw that dart and hope I get home. Let's see. Jamar Chase, he didn't project to practice on Tuesday. with their Monday or Saturday matchup. So that again, on some of these teams, they're already a week early when it comes to their estimated practice report, or a day early when it comes to their estimated practice reports. So that would be like the Bengals. Like we get a better idea of what the guy would have done today. I don't know how much this really eats into Jamar Chase. At this point, would expect him to play. I do think that like Jake Browning may be a little bit different player than Joe Burrow, and you're like, yeah, well, you don't need to tell me that, internet guy. But in this case, I could definitely see that Jake Browning is going to take what the defense gives him, and instead of trying to force the ball to his best players. That may be good from a real life football perspective. That's probably bad from our fantasy perspective. T. Higgins was at 75% snaps, 4 for 2 for 72. So again, he's going to stay on the table as that boom bust, like wide receiver 2, type 3 type guy. If you're wondering, Tyler Boyd's still the number 3 at 52% snaps. And so that means like Trenton Irwin and Io Visas are kind of off the table. If you're chasing, the tight ends in Cincinnati, because Tanner Hudson had that touchdown, he was only at 23% snaps. Drew Sample was at 67 and Irv Smith was at 13. So this is another one with these tight ends that like, don't get fooled. If you want to chase that 23% snap share, like that's a pretty good indication that you're just going to have an absolute bust in a week. I don't know how they're using their tight ends, and probably the Bengals are the only one that can tell you. I do have when it comes to the Bengals and their defense rest of the season, Bengals defense hasn't been necessarily good, but Minnesota, like again, the matchups, Minnesota is going to be an okay role because of their quarterback situation and now their running back situation. Even their wide receiver potentially situation with Justin Jefferson being out. Pittsburgh, Mitch Tribb right now, like that's a turnover machine, and Kansas City's been really inconsistent. So overall, like they are kind of a sneaky dark horse type of look at me, I'm cute type of play, especially in deeper leagues. So if you're into that type of thing, all right, Bills. Josh Allen's elite. That's not what we're here to talk about. So James Cook was at 44% snaps, 10 for 58, another 5 for 5 for 83 in a touchdown. So at this point, like he is going to be a little boom bust in that RB2 range. But again, at that 44% snaps, they're just getting him the football there. Like that's 15 opportunities basically half the time he's on the field, they're getting him the football. So like I would feel pretty good about getting that 10 to 15 opportunities in this case attached to this offense if I'm running him as an RB2 or in that like flex type position. Um, the other two guys, Latavius Murray was at 32% snaps and Ty Johnson was at 21% snaps. So again, I think this may just be kind of the Bills running back rotation, and there's not a lot we could do about it. Remember, James Cook is a slightly undersized guy, so I could definitely see that they're trying to take certain snaps off of him. And at this point, because of the change in OC, that I would feel pretty good about rolling him out with a little bit of volatility and involved with him. So Stephon Diggs with 11 targets. Gabe Davis with that 2. Khalil Shakur's at 61% snaps. And again, like if I'm rolling out these juggernaut teams, or I have one, obviously I'm not rolling out anybody, outside of Diggs. If I don't have one, some of these guys are going to have a lot of volatility to them. They're probably going to be just as good as everybody else. If I'm rolling them out. The problem with the Stephon Diggs 11 targets and how he's actually been like, doing this like on a rather consistent basis to finish the seasons off. If you're wondering about the Bills, yeah, I would probably be a little bit more worried with Stephon Diggs coming into the rest of the season. These two matchups, the Cowboys and then the Patriots, would kind of bother me. And then the Chargers now kind of predict to be this uglier type of game script. So I would probably be looking to downgrade Stephon Diggs and his overall, my expectation is what he will be to finish the season off, if that makes any sense. All right. Dalton Kincaid was at 78% snaps, 8 for 5 for 21. He's day to day with a shoulder. And then Dawson Knox came back at 47% snaps, 3 for 3 for 36. And this was after they said that he was going to be, ease back into his role. So right now, like I wouldn't be trusting Dalton Kincaid at all. I may actually be dropping him in one of my leagues to pick up a guy that I'm a little bit more worried about being rolled against me in that league. So if you're into that type of thing, they do have New England in the chip right now as I pull them back up, and then they are a better play for the Chargers next week. So like that's something to be paying attention to if they're available in any way, shape, or form in your league, or you've just been holding on to them going forward. All right, the Broncos. Russ can be streamed this week at Detroit. The Detroit defense has kind of been faltering as of late, so I would upgrade Russ slightly. I don't think the offense is necessarily going to be fast. He was 21 to 33, 224, two touchdowns, a pick, and another 6 for 5. And again, that's what I would be more looking at with Russ, is that there's a possibility of having that rushing work that I would be looking for. The offense isn't necessarily going to be good. It's an okay matchup, and then I would feel pretty good about him in the chip. I just would have to be streaming around him in week 17. That matchup against the Patriots says don't be getting cute. Javonte Williams, to pull him up. This is good news. He's probably creeping his way into running back one land based off of usage alone. So 60% snaps, 17 for 66 and a touchdown, and then they're 4 for 3 for 25. And again, with P. Ryan at 21% snaps, and then McLaughlin at 19% snaps, and hopefully you guys enjoyed that train horn. I'm less concerned with them cutting into his workload, and more so that this is just the offense is going to go through him. If he's going to be in that 20 opportunities a game land, and again, he's the main guy that they're going to be looking at once they get in the red zone. That's all I really care about. So, like, he may be somebody that I would feel better about going up against these juggernaut teams, or even potentially me having a juggernaut team if he's in that, like, RB2 range and he's actually upgraded. Let's see. Cortland Sutton, like, again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't even know how the sausage is made. 75% snaps, 4 for 3 for 62 and a tug. The defense, and I don't know why I have a K there, but the defense, they do have some sneaky appeal against Detroit. I'm more interested in rolling them out week 16 and week 17. So right now, if they're available in your league for this week 16 and week 17 matchup, like, this is when we would be stashing them after waivers to get ready to take advantage of these the semis and the chip if they're available. All right, moving on to our Browns. So the move with Joe Flacco is more of a procedural move when it comes to him being moved back down to the practice squad. I think it says, heads back to practice squad. It's procedural. Again, this is all that roster management stuff. They can move a guy down, up and down, I think up to 3 times before they have to make a decision on him. So again, why would you cut someone from your active roster at this point where you could just move them up and move them down? I do think that he's serviceable from a fantasy perspective, at least for the next couple weeks against the Bears and the Texans. Um, I probably would be going someplace else. Again, he's not going to have any rushing, floor, and trying to guess that high passing volume. I think the Browns are one of the teams that play faster, but again, I just don't know how to predict this matchup against the Bears. And then Houston, I would feel better if CJ Stroud was there, because that there's a possibility of more points, and that means that there's a possibility the Browns are going to have to play more points. And then the Jets, I wouldn't be very comfortable rolling them out. But overall, these are not particularly great matchups from a predictability standpoint that I would be wanting to put my season on Joe Flacco. If you're in a 2 quarterback league or superflex type league, obviously I think that there's enough upside there to get you home at that position versus trying to chase some of the other guys that are non-quarterbacks. Running back wise, so Jerome Ford, it says avoids a hand fracture. So if you're rolling him out or you're chasing a running back, like, this is something to be aware of. I've talked about this before in the past. I could definitely see a situation where Kareem Hunt, he's been hovering around this like 33% snaps. He gets the goal line work. He hasn't been as involved in the passing game. That's because Jerome Ford is more of their receiving back. But I could definitely see, even if Jerome Ford has to miss time, Kareem Hunt's not going to get elevated into that bell cow role, and Pierre Strong might actually get that opportunity. But again, if I have the ability to pick up Kareem Hunt, that would probably be the uh, most predictive role, is that he's going to move into that bell cow type slot at least for a week or so, if Jerome Ford has to miss some time. So that's one of the things to be paying attention to early before tomorrow's practice reports come out with the injuries. Let's see. Amari Cooper was at 84% snaps, 7 for 7, or 7 for 77 with a fumble loss. I think he had 11 targets. I didn't write that down. Elijah Moore was at 70% snaps, 6 for 3 for 42. Cedric Tillman was at 61% snaps, 4 for 2 for 23. And then David Bell, the second-year guy, was at 9% snaps, 3 for 1 for 41 and a tug. And this is going to be something that does concern me a little bit from a fantasy perspective. We were kind of chasing the Cedric Tillman snaps and expecting that spike week to happen, if I can find him. And so this jumping down to 61% snaps, and I don't see an injury or anything like that. That worries me that like the team just has said, "Hey, we saw what we got from you, and you're not giving us what we're looking for, and it's time for us to move on." Because again, this David Bell play, the 41-yard touchdown, like 9% snaps, and he got 3 targets, and they went to him on a pretty crucial down. So like that could be that flop that has been going on that we're kind of like a little worried about. That chasing Cedric Tillman, especially in dynasty leagues, it's something to be paying attention to. It just may not be there. The coaches have made their mind up. They said, "Hey, we gave you the opportunity. You didn't pay off. We're going to go a different direction." And David Bell has size. He's just like a 4'6" 40 guy. I think he's a third-round draft pick out of Purdue. So again, like it's just, hey, we're just going to go a different direction for the rest of the year. So that's something to be paying attention to. David Njoku was at 82% snaps, 8 for 6 for 91, 2 touchdowns. Again, like these are predictive tight end ones that they may not be able to necessarily go fight with some of the other higher volume guys. But again, a guy like Njoku, how he's being used. And this is what a guy I was wrong on. Like I said, with Joe Flacco, he may not be looking at Njoku. That's just not what he's going to look at. He may be looking at like your Elijah Moore and your Amari Cooper down the field. And obviously, I'm wrong on that with the his 2 touchdown game. Let's see. I have for the defense. If I were playing it smart, if smart is the same as cute in some regards, with the Cleveland defense, the Bears, Houston, and the Jets. At this point, they all would kind of concern me in the fantasy championship. So if I'm trying to be a little cute, trying to be a little risky, none of these 3 games I may be rolling out the Browns defense against. And we'll talk more about the Jets when we get there. But again, the Jets had a pretty good offensive showing for the first time in a while. That would concern me a little bit going into the chip. So if I was holding on to them, I would be more wanting to see that the Jets can revert back to what we thought that they were. If they continue to look good in the next couple of weeks, this is something that I would be aware of. And especially like if Aaron Rodgers does come back in week 16, that's a variable. It's not necessarily one that I would be concerned with, but it's still a variable that I have to account for when it comes to like rolling out guys and these games that are going to, week 16 is a money game in a lot of leagues. You'll get your money back if you come in third place. So that, or double your money if you come in, second place. So if you win that game, that's something to be aware of. All right. So moving on to the Buccaneers, Baker May disappointed a little bit, 14 for 29, 144, 2 tugs, another 3 for 3, and finally got that rushing touchdown that I've been looking for all season, because all it took is for me to say that I'm tired of chasing it. It's not going to happen. And then he actually gets it on a zone read keep. I saw the highlight of that. So like there you go. Green Bay, I feel a little bit better about him being a streamer. If you're into that type of thing against Green Bay, Jacksonville, he's probably an okay streamer. Little downgrade against week 17 and New Orleans overall, but again, like this is a guy that's just been throwing touchdown passes and he's attached to good toys. So like it's going to happen, even though the offense has been slow and he has not. The offense hasn't been particularly good. Rashad White, he's going to be in that league winner category again, just because of the workload. Again, a little surprising, 84% snaps, but it's the 25 for 102. So he is turning into a runner at this point, and he does have the opportunity to have like one of those 1,500 yards is usually the floor when it comes to overall running back one usage. And he's going to get there more than likely. He's going to probably have 1,000 yards, at least 1,000 yards rushing. He may get into that like 16 or 6 or 700 yard receiving range, which is going to be really really interesting for his fantasy stock next year. Overall, like Mike Evans was disappointing. 93% snap, 6 for 1 for 8. And Chris Godwin, again, sometimes this is maybe the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Sometimes he was at 84% snaps, 11 targets, 5 receptions for only 53 yards. He did have 139 air yards, which like I've been kind of tracking air yards in the background, and that's a lot for him. He's more of the crossing route type of guy. Mike Evans didn't actually have air yards this week when it came to his 5 incomplete passes. They weren't vertical shots. So again, I don't know if that was a little bit of AJ Terrell in the matchup or a little bit of the squeaky wheels, probably a little bit of both. Trey Palmer was only at 85% snaps, 1 for 1 for 5. And again, the Trey Palmer and Kate Otten are probably more dynasty stashes. Kate Otten was at 97% snaps, 5 for 2 for 16 and a tug. And this comes after me saying, like, I just don't trust it. I want to be rolling him out there. And that would give you at least a 40-degree day from a tight end position, which means you probably win your league week if you roll him out. The defense is probably not a play. They're not a particularly good defense this year. Their matchups, Green Bay, again, Jordan Love's looked all right. Jacksonville's all right. And then, New Orleans is all right. So I would not be chasing the upside of sacks and turnovers. All right, Cardinals. No news news on Hollywood Brown is he's expected to practice this week and potentially play with that wheel or that heel. Michael Carter, if I'm a James Conner owner, I would be cuffing him. If you're in deeper leagues, I would still be picking up Michael Carter, potentially looking for a usage shift for the rest of the season. Like I said before, James Conner potentially could be cut in the offseason. Michael Carter still under contract. Michael Carter is a little bit more dynamic than James Conner, who's more of that tackle breaking grinder, and Michael Carter can be that 3-down type of back. The other thing to be paying attention to is Michael Wilson did practice on that estimated practice report that they have going on. So on Monday. So he did practice, and he is expected to play this week. So that's something that I would be looking forward when it would come to the potential of a usage flop between Hollywood Brown, who is a free agent, and Michael Wilson being that 3rd-round draft pick if they like him. Trey McBride's still going to be a unicorn, and I wouldn't be rolling out the defense. All right, Chargers news. So Justin Herbert did have surgery, and he's been placed on IR, so he's done for the year. They did call up or re-sign Max Duggan from the practice squad. He's the TCU rookie. Here my thoughts on these two guys. Easton Stick is probably not anybody fantasy relevant. He played for the North Dakota Bison up there. Their dynasty that they have going on in the not the bowl series, but the one below that, the playoff series. So I'm not saying he's bad at football. I'm not saying he's good at football. He's just a guy. And I don't have necessarily an opinion on Max Duggan, but at this point, with Easton Stick, he didn't win the starting or the backup quarterback job as a rookie. They went out and they signed Chase Daniels, and I remember this from back a few years ago because he's like a 5th-year guy. Easton Stick. So he's just been hanging around as the backup. And a lot of time these are guys that they really like to be clipboard carriers. They do a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. They break down tape. They're like a caddy for the starting quarterback. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that they want Easton Stick to succeed. I don't know how much this downgrades or upgrades the Chargers toys because of the fact that they haven't been very consistent in the first place. The guy that I would be a little bit more more interested in if they rolled him out would be Max Duggan if they decide to go that route, because I think we kind of know what we got in Easton Stick. He's a career backup quarterback. We may not know what we have in Max Duggan, and that goes from both the concept of the toys as in a fantasy play. All right, Austin Eckler was at 72% snaps, 10 for 51 and a touchdown, another 7 for 5 for 49 in the passing game. And then here's what we have to say about the coach speak when they said that guys like Josh Kelly and Isaiah Spiller were going to eat into Austin Eckler in the blowout, basically the blowout with the Broncos. So Josh Kelly was at 10% snaps, 3 for 6, and then Isaiah Spiller was at 18% snaps, 6 for 19. So again, they just went to the well of Austin Eckler, and then from a fantasy perspective, he got you home. He finally got those receiving work that you basically drafted him to get, and then he scored a touchdown. I think maybe the guy that takes the biggest hit out of all this is Keenan Allen, with whether or not it's Easton Stick or Max Duggan, because he's basically a volume play, and I don't know if I would trust either one of these guys to pepper him with the volume that he's going to get. If the offense takes a downgrade and it's already been inconsistent, that would bother me a lot rolling him out. So again, you're probably not going to have the cojones to be benching a guy who just got 12 targets. But again, I don't know how much I would be looking forward to them being very productive down the line. Kind of probably like a wide receiver 3 on steroids at this point is probably what I'd be thinking. I did go and I did look at the Quentin Johnston usage. He does look better on this 88% snaps, 4 for 3 for 91. And again, this would be something else that I would just generally be thinking that with the Chargers shutting down for the season, hey, let's force feed the ball to Quentin Johnston and see what we can get. That's probably their best option at this point. Keenan Allen is over the age apex. I think he's in the last year of his deal, listed as a non-participant on Tuesday. So sneaky play maybe with Quentin Johnston. He's going to be in that role going forward. Don't know if I would have the cojones to be rolling him out as a wide receiver 3, but like definitely is back on the menu from a stash standpoint because they got to see what they got the rest of the year. The Chargers season been an absolute train wreck. Gerald Everett, 68% snaps, 8 for 5 for 39. He was limited on Monday. I just want to pull up the schedule real quick. So the Chargers are a Thursday night matchup. So that he was limited on Monday. Donald Parham was at 22% snap. And again, with I don't know. I'm not sure if I would be very confident in rolling out any of the Chargers pieces with the quarterback shifts, and as much as they've been inconsistent. So that would mean you're probably rolling out Eckler from a volume-based standpoint. You're probably sticking with Keenan Allen from a volume-based standpoint, and then maybe Quentin Johnston is a dart throw. I don't know how much I'd be trusting the tight end. If you're in a league where you're rolling out Gerald Everett versus like some of the other top tight ends that we've been talking about all of the year, like you're really in a bad spot and you're really in a deep league. All right, the Chiefs. So Patrick Mahomes freaked out a little bit. 25 of 43 for 271, a touchdown and a pick. They've been really non-predictive. So I will answer this comment when I get done with this video and down there in the comment section about like what should I do to upgrade my team going into playoffs. I don't know how much I would be trusting Patrick Mahomes at all for the rest of the year based off of like just what you're getting from him. Basically you're trying to chase a 40-degree day with a little bit of upside. This New England game would scare me a lot because of how feisty the New England defense has been and what they've been able to do to some of the other teams they've lined up against. Remember the Raiders or excuse me, it's not just the Raiders. Antonio Pierce, the defensive minded head coach for the Raiders, is basically coaching for his job next year. And this is a team that basically just got done hanging, almost shutting out the Vikings last week. So again, like my expectations, again, this is probably not going to be a shootout game. That's what you're kind of looking at. You're looking at a guy that's playing a bad defense that has to score points, playing in a high paced offense. I just don't see that in the next 2 weeks against the Patriots and the Raiders. The Cincinnati game may be that type of script that we like from a fantasy perspective, but that means that you have to get to your chip. So I'm not saying that I would have, again, the balls to be benching Patrick Mahomes, but right now, week 15 against the Patriots, that's something that I would be considering and weighing the matchups against a guy like, Jake Browning. All right. No news on Isaiah Pacheco. Last time I looked, all the same thing we know, he's not heading to the IR. Overall, when it comes to Clyde, and this is kind of what we were expecting. So Clyde got some of the less valuable work. He did get a red zone carry compared to the red zone carry that McKinnon cashed in and the one red zone target that McKinnon did have. But again, the volume-based play, we were kind of expecting to get that like 10 to 15 opportunities. That's what he got. That's what he's probably going to be if Pacheco continues to be out. And again, limited opportunities to score touchdowns, especially because the offense just isn't as good. Jarrett McKinnon was only at 45% snaps compared to CEH's 48. So it is kind of a split backfield. He's getting more of the high volume or high value work in the red zone. But again, you're looking at a guy that got a total of 7 opportunities. He cashed one of those in for a touchdown, and that would be what you'd be rolling out there in your flex or RB2 range versus just the volume that Clyde gets. And again, Clyde is not probably the greatest athletic specimen, but again, like I don't know if I would be feeling very comfortable about rolling out either of these guys. They're not getting pure volume, and trying to vulture a touchdown from McKinnon is probably not something I'd be very comfortable doing either. The big news on all of this is that and Deneric Prince reverted back to the practice squad, didn't get any usage. That's from a dynasty perspective. Big news on all this is Rashee Rice. So he was up to 85% snaps. I did see a Twitter post where his route participation rate has been going up from 52% to 68 to 69 to 82 since the bye week in week 10. So like it's not going to be hyperbole to say at this point Rashee Rice is going to be a league winner. He was at 85% snaps, 10 targets, 7 receptions, 72 yards and a touchdown. He did have a fumble lost in this game. So at this point, like not necessarily a wide receiver 1, but he's creeping in that direction. And could we see another week 12 type of spike week or better going in the rest of the season? Yeah. So in this New England game, they're going to have to basically choose, are they going to take away Rashee Rice or are they going to take away Travis Kelce? That's generally what New England does is they take away the number one option. At this point, it's your guess as good as mine who New England is going to think is the number one option in this offense, but it ain't going to be McKinnon. It ain't going to be CEH. So I could definitely see Rashee Rice having a monster game, or I could see Travis Kelce having a monster game. One of the two. I don't see necessarily both. Let's see. So if you're wondering about the rest of the wide receivers in this backfield, Justin Watson was at 55% snaps. Sky Moore was out down to 35% snaps. Tony was up to 44. He did have that costly penalty. MVS was at 33% snaps. Richie James was at 17% snaps. But the big news why I bring all this up, Justin Ross, the second-year guy, he had his suspension lifted. He's back. I don't know what they're going to do with anything. I haven't seen any news on this, but I could definitely see next year that it's going to be Rashee Rice and Justin Ross and maybe even Sky Moore in the slot. I could definitely see that's how the wide receivers are going to shake out. So I would be looking at Justin Ross going back and continuing to slowly but surely reintegrate himself into the offense for the rest of the season. I don't think that has any big impact in redraft, other than to potentially take guys like Justin Watson, MVS, Richie James out of the rotation. But I think I don't think it affects Rashee Rice, and so if you're still in Dynasty, this is news that you would be looking to if you're interested in Justin Ross news. So Travis Kelce was at 89% snaps, 10 for 6 for 83, and then Noah Gray was at 39% snaps. As I click this off, the defense, if I pull them up. So the defense, they have New England this week. I think this is a pretty good play, considering that they still weren't particularly good against the Steelers last week. Vegas, I feel better about after their matchup against Minnesota. It's probably not going to be the greatest in the world, but I would feel pretty good about that. Hopefully, you guys hear that motorcycle in the background. And then Cincinnati. Now this would be something I would be less interested in rolling out Kansas City for my chip. But overall, like this, I think they have the best matchup overall this week. All right. The Colts. So Gardner Minshew was serviceable, 26 to 39, 240, a tug and a pick. And I should just leave this up because I'm talking about everything. His matchup, Pittsburgh. This is going to be an ugly, slower game. Same thing with the Falcons and probably the Raiders to finish off. So like he's going to have limited streamability versus some of these other guys that are going to potentially be out there. That's just he's a good quarterback. He has his flaws. He is a little bit of a turnover machine and sack machine, but overall, if you're really in a bad spot, I think you could roll him out. Otherwise, I probably would be pivoting to some of the other guys that are out there. Hopefully, that you have to do that. So if you're wondering about Jonathan Taylor news, so am I. It says remains absence at practice. So I haven't heard any news on him. Zach Moss was at 84% snaps, 13 for 28, 8 for 4 for 28. If you're cuffing Zach Moss at this point, the guy to cuff, it would be Trey Sermon, I guess. He was at 5% snaps. I think he was the only other guy that really got any usage in this game. Michael Pittman was at 86% snaps, 11 for 8 for 95. Josh Downs was at 78% snaps, 3 for 3 for 32. Alec Pierce was at 91% snaps, 3 for 2 for 22. So overall, I'm not probably chasing any of these guys, other than maybe a dart throw on Alec Pierce, maybe a dart throw on Josh Downs. But I think there are still better guys to be chasing than these two guys if I'm in that deep of a league. Alec Ogletree, the tight end, was at 27% snaps, two targets. Kyle Granson was at 38% snaps, 4 for 2 for 17. Mo Ali Cox was at 28% snaps, 1 for 1 for 2 and a touchdown. And then the news that the guy that I have been following for a while that I think, trying to figure out what's going on with this tight end position for the Colts. And this is again for Dynasty. Will Mallory was at 31% snaps, which is down from 2 weeks ago at 37% snaps, but he did have 5 targets, 5 receptions, 46 yards. So there may be a little bit of fire here when it comes to what's going on with Will Mallory. Again, he's an athletic freak. And I have the same notes that I have written down last week. Only the Colts really know what they're doing with these tight ends. The defense does have a lot of sneaky appeal to finish the season off. Pittsburgh, Atlanta, and the Raiders. So if they're available at the very least, I would be blocking someone else from potentially rolling them out against me. All right. Washington news. So as far as I know, there's still no news on Brian Robinson, whether or not he's going to be playing this week. So in this case, like if Antonio Gibson is somehow magically available in your league, like I would be picking him up. Chris Rodriguez is the other guy that like after waivers I would be picking up. Again, I could definitely see he gets the majority of the Brian Robinson work, and then Antonio Gibson just stays with the usage that he's been doing in the primarily in the passing game with a little bit of rushing work. So I could definitely see that Chris Rodriguez gets a majority of the Brian Robinson work. Brian Robinson has already been rather inconsistent on the year. So, again, this is outside of deeper leagues when it comes to Chris Rodriguez maybe being a thing. But again, this is just something to be paying attention to. Again, this is capital spent. Even though it's really late in the season, if it costs me relatively nothing to find out versus somebody that are out there, like if I pick up a Chris Rodriguez, I throw him on the bottom of my bench, and then next week I have a guy that I could potentially roll out if I need to. That would be something I'd be interested in. Depending, there might be news that comes out, and I don't have to go run to the waiver wire and trying to pick up a free agent, something like that. That's just how I kind of roll with guys like Chris Rodriguez. I don't really have anything else to talk about with this team. I wouldn't be rolling out the defense. This is like the worst fantasy defense out there. Cowboys, Dak was 24, 39, 271, a touchdown, another 3 for 11 and a fumble, and their blowout. Tony Pollard was at 72% snaps, 15 for 59, 8 for 7 for 37. Again, that's elite usage. It's just not efficient. Rico Dowdle, the cuff, 28% snaps, 12 for 46, a touchdown, another 1 for 1 for 6. And some of that usage was in real football time, not the blowout. Don't have a lot to say about CeeDee Lamb. You already know what you got there. Brandon Cooks was at 77% snaps, 5 for 2 for 37. So again, he's going to be hanging around there purely based off of the opportunity of being on the field attached to this offense. Is that low end wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 type flex range. Jake Ferguson was at 73% snaps, 8 for 5 for 72. I've already talked about this before when it comes to their defense. I would feel very confident rolling them out if you weren't, even against these matchups, because again, Jalen Hurts was kind of predictive. He is kind of a little bit of a turnover and sack machine. So's Josh Allen. So's Tua. So's Jared Goff. I'm leaving them in there. Ride or die. Like they're gonna win me my league, or they're gonna lose me my league. But it's not gonna be because I'm just like throwing dirt against the wall and hoping it sticks. All right. Moving on to and I'll just bring them up right now. Moving on to the Dolphins with Tua. So this was a matchup that I definitely could have seen that it was going to be much better for him against Tennessee. You can see 23, a 33, 240, 2 fumbles, 1 lost. Again, I would have thought this would have been his last good week to be rolling him out there, and then you go Jets, Cowboys, Ravens to finish the season off. Again, I'm not going to tell you how to run your roster. I can tell you that, like in my high school league, if I had benched CJ Stroud against the Jets, I probably would have got the 1 seed. I didn't do that. I now have to knife fight to stay in playoffs. That's just how it rolls sometimes. So the tea leaves say, hey, I should be going in a different direction. And there's more notes that we're going to be talking about. So Tyreek Hill is day-to-day with an ankle in this game. He only played 47% of snaps. Jalen Warren was up to 82% of snaps. They really did not look good in this game. I was kind of following the ticker on this one overall, if I bring up the schedule. So when we talk about a little bit more about this game on the Monday night game, if I pull them up. So the Miami or the Dolphins scored 27 points. That's kind of misleading because of the fact that one of them was a defensive touchdown early on in the game, and then you had a fumble by Will Levis, and then I think there was an interception also that led to a couple of their other touchdowns later in the game. So then that's how they got there. And so I would not necessarily be thinking that I can trust this Cowboy or this Dolphins team going against 3 predictive matchups against like 3 of the best defenses in football, saying like I can trust that. Again, from Mostert was the same way. These 2 rushing touchdowns came late off those turnovers. So again, if I can't trust him that they're going to get into the red zone for him to score, that's going to downgrade him overall. He was at 64% snaps, 21 for 96 that got those 2 touchdowns, 1 for 1 for 4 in the passing game. If you're wondering about A-Chain, 46% snaps, 7 carries, 47 yards. And then another 9 for 5 for 24. He was on the game in the game late in the 2-minute drill. So again, I could definitely see him having a little bit more him being the safer play going into the playoffs than Mostert, even though with Mostert's being on the field more, if that stays consistent, he's going to have more of the opportunity. But I would still be, I personally would be valuing A Chain over Mostert for the playoffs. And then what's his face? Jeff Wilson was only at 1% of snaps in this game. If you're curious about that type of thing, and this really does also affect the Dolphins defense, even though these matchups. So now with the Jets looking potentially better after their last game with Zach Wilson, this changes how the game flow is going to go when it comes to the defense. I would feel a little less confident rolling the Dolphins defense against the Jets, especially after their performance against the Titans. Then you have Dallas, and then you have the Ravens to end the year. I don't even know if I would necessarily be rolling them out. About the only thing I would maybe be doing with the Dolphins defense at this point is holding on to them, so they're not rolled against me by someone who wants to get cheeky against the Jets. All right, excuse me. So the Eagles, Jalen Hurts was 18 for 27, 197, another 5 for 30, and a fumble lost against the Cowboys. And again, these are the things that like predictive benchings. The Cowboys would say, hey, this is going to be a tough matchup. Do I have the ability to pivot someplace else? I rolled him out in my high stakes leagues. I got burned. Again, this is something that's like, do I take this guy, the quarterback 3 overall, something like that, and do I bench him versus the Cowboy, or a matchup that says, hey, you should be benching this guy? Something that it's really easy on Mondays to go, yeah, I should have done that. It's another thing to actually have the wherewithal to do it. And again, like talking about like a Patrick Mahomes, whether or not I would be actually able to pull that off or not. In this case, like I did think this would be a little bit more competitive game. I thought that Jalen Hurts could get me my 40-degree day. He didn't do that. But again, this is the type of stuff that like in the playoffs, like that razor thin margin, unless you're in those sprint type leagues, if you're just in a head-to-head matchup, I kind of prefer those. That's just how I would be looking at it. DeAndre Swift was at 51% snaps, 11 for 39. So we've been talking about this for a while. You're not going to get the receiving work, and there's going to be a limited amount of opportunities for him to score touchdowns because he's not the guy that they want to score touchdowns. It's going to go through Jalen Hurts on the ground and through the air. So this is something else to be paying attention to. Kenny Gainwell's at 45% snaps, only 4 for 28. And again, there was a really wonky game flow because the Cowboys just jumped out on this one. Boston Scott was at 8% snaps. Penny was a healthy scratch. AJ Brown, 13 targets, 9 for 94, a fumble lost, and Devontae Smith, 10 targets, 5 receptions, 73 yards, another fumble lost. Dallas Goedert, first game back, 84% snaps, 4 for 30. From a schedule standpoint, that's more the main thing that we're looking at with these guys. Seattle's defense has been all over the place. They can be very good. They can be very bad. This is going to be a hard game to predict. Right now, I don't know how comfortable I would be with the New York Giants game. They have been scrappier. Week 17, I would feel very good if I can get there with the chip. But overall, like I'm not saying to be worried about the Eagles. Again, this is more matchup shopping. Some of these guys can eat into each other. Brown, Smith, and Goedert can eat into each other. Swift is going to have that very limited opportunities. So I'm not benching Brown or Devonta. Goedert, is going to have about as much high a ceiling as any of the other tight ends. Realizing that the chances of him getting me there are going to be limited, and then Jalen Hurts is still going to be Jalen Hurts. Again, they haven't been as good this year as they were last year. That kind of gives me a little bit to think about on a week-to-week basis over the next 3 weeks if I can stay alive. And then the defense, though, the defense is one of the ones if they've been dropped. Right now, I'm not going to say they're an automatic play against the Giants. I would feel a lot better against them, Arizona. And this is another one that I would be picking up. I would not necessarily feel great of rolling them out against Seattle, but this is another one. If they're on my waiver wire, I would be picking them up, getting ready to roll them if there aren't a better available defenses available week 16 and week 17 that are out there. All right, Falcons, Desmond Ridder, 26 of 43, 47, a tug and a pick. Let me pull him up real quick. And then another 4 for 15 and a tug on the ground, 2 fumbles, both of them not lost. If I pull him up. A little bit to talk about when it comes to Desmond Ridder. So this schedule that they have going up, Carolina and definitely the Colts, maybe in Chicago. This is a very interesting streaming matchups. All I have to say about this when it comes to Desmond Ridder is, be my guest. You're gonna have more confidence in him than I would to be rolling him out. This is still probably going to remain a slow offense, a high high volume rushing offense, limited opportunities for him to throw the football downfield. And he's also not the guy that even though he's got a little bit of nimbly bimbly in him, he's not a guy that I would necessarily be chasing him being the guy that's going to get the red zone work in the running game to score those rushing touchdowns. Bijan, still going to be hanging around, like potentially to be an RB1 by the end of the season. 78% snaps, 10 carries, 34 yards, a tug, 7 for 5 for 54. I like the passing work more than I like the rushing work. Did get the rushing work. Tyler Algier was at 21% snaps, 9 for 40. Basically, when he's on the field, they're going to just run him in the back of the offensive line. Cordell Patterson was at 17% snaps, 3 for 7. Again, this is just work that doesn't go to Bijan. Kyle Pitts, not Kyle Pitts, Drake London finally has the fantasy week that we've been looking forward to. 76% snaps, 11 for 10, 172. Didn't get home, though. Does have plus matchups against Carolina, the Colts, and even potentially the Bears. I still think that because of the offense and the quarterback, he's going to be very volatile. So, if I don't have a better wide receiver 2 or flex play, something along that line, I just chasing this again may not be something I'd be interested in. Not a bad matchup against Carolina overall. To get home on a low efficient or a low opportunity type of week. So there is stuff to like about it. Again, I just don't know how much I feel comfortable going back to the well. Kyle Pitts, on the other hand, this is interesting. So he was up to 85% snaps, 6 for 3 for 57 and a touchdown. And they tend to use him a little bit more vertically in this offense. So this would be somebody that if I have Kyle Pitts, I would be rolling him out and kind of hoping that this stays consistent. Jonnu Smith was at 69% snaps, 7 for 4 for 27. So again, kind of how the offense shakes out. The defense does have some appeal for the rest of the season. Definitely would be rolling them out as a priority against Carolina, maybe against Indianapolis, and a possibility against the Bears, depending on how the Bears look the rest of the season. All right. The legend of Tommy DeVito, as I think I've seen some people calling it. Tommy DeVito goes out against the Green Bay Packers, 17 for 21, 158 and a touchdown, another 10 for 71 on the ground. That's the little bit more interesting thing from a fantasy standpoint. If he can stay consistent with some of this rushing work that he's got, still probably wouldn't be feeling confident rolling him against the Saints. Maybe the Eagles, maybe the Rams to finish the season off. If you're into that type of thing, this is more like we like rooting for those guys. I do like rolling some guys out in fantasy that I know I shouldn't because it's fun to root for them. So if you're into that type of thing, that's just what to be looking at. The bigger news with Tommy DeVito being able to play like a real NFL quarterback is it pushes Barkley back into that high end to low end, high end RB2, low end RB1 based off of overall usage. Now he gets back to that area of being able to score those touchdowns. And that's the bigger thing is these rushing touchdowns came from the red zone. So the more that he can do this, that's what we want to see. So he's at 86% snaps, 20 for 86, 2 tugs, 4 for 3 for 15 and a fumble, a fumble loss. So the other thing that this does, if you're a Barkley owner, is it puts the possibility of cuffing him to Matt Breida back on the table. Breida was the only real guy of consequence to get any action in this game. He's at 18% snaps. That's just something to be paying attention to going forward if you want to be cuffing your Barkley shares. Let's see. Darius Slayton was at 93% snaps. Wan'Dale Robinson, we're going to talk about him in a second. Isaiah Hodgins, he was at 36% snaps. He's the one who had the touchdown overall. Jalen Hyatt, the guy that we've been chasing the air yards, he was at 64% snaps, 3 for 2 for 13 air yards. So at this point, I would not be looking to chase him at all. The air yards just weren't there. So the opportunity's gone down a little bit. And then the air yards aren't there. So chasing that over the next 3 weeks in the playoffs is probably not a good idea. The guy that I'm now interested in when it comes to the Giants passing game is Wan'Dale Robinson. So this goes from that 5 for or 6 targets, 5 receptions, 30 yards type of guy. He has 7 targets, 6 receptions, 79 yards, another 2 carries for 36 yards. So the biggest thing why this interests me is his 7 targets, there were 70 air yards. And this is a guy that's been hovering around 13 air yards a game. So now he's up to 70. So that means real routes. Not just hey, we're going to check him down and hope that he makes a guy miss. This is he's actually the guy that they're trying to throw the football to down the field. So this is one of the guys that I would say from a priority standpoint, really moves up the food chain. this is a guy that like I would feel comfortable chasing this into a week and getting burned, saying that there's enough there that I'm just not throwing a random dart hoping it lands. You have a quarterback that's looked better throwing to a guy that's being used as a real NFL guy in an offense that may not be horrible. Um, Theoretically, with a couple matchups down the line that we could take advantage of. Like I like this, and this is a guy that like may not have been talked about, probably going to be lower on priorities of picking him up. Daniel Bellinger was at 89% snaps, 2 for 2 for 15. Waller may come off the IR, so outside of chasing the high opportunity snap share for Daniel Bellinger, like that dream comes to a close on that one. And because Tommy DeVito is playing better, this actually moves the Giants to have some fantasy relevance down the line from a defensive perspective. Uh, the Saints, maybe because they're not great. Jalen Hurts can be a turnover machine, and then the Rams, Matthew Stafford can be kind of a turnover machine. So as long as the Giants offense can kind of stay in this relevant landscape, we definitely could be looking at the possibility of a sneaky Giants role in deeper leagues. All right. The Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence played with a high ankle sprain. He was 28 of 50, 257, 3 tugs, 3 picks, another 3 for 11 on the ground. ETN was at 78% snaps, 14 for 35, a touchdown, a 4 for 4 for 37. This is starting to bother me a little bit. The overall inefficiency of ETN really makes me, obviously you're taking the opportunity, you're rolling with it. It's just overall the lack of efficiency goes from like an elite RB1 at one point in the season down to like probably like a high end 2 just because of the lack of efficiency in this offense going forward. Dearness Johnson, he's the cuff. He was at 26% snaps, 3 for 12, another 3 for 2 for 16. And that he's being a little bit more efficient than ETN. So I don't know if ETN is just wearing down going into the fantasy playoffs. Let's see. Calvin Ridley, he was at 95% snaps, 13 for 4 for 53. And pay attention to the air yards here. He was at 166 air yards. Zay Jones was 84% snaps, 14 for 5 for 29. He had 225 air yards. So both these guys, their X and their Z were being pushed down the field vertically in this game. That's just how it worked. It wasn't efficient. I don't know how much this is going to be something that's going to be predictive going forward. It's just kind of how it worked out. And I wouldn't be chasing it. Trying to chase pieces of this offense have been very inconsistent all year. And this could be an issue of a lot of stuff from a real life football perspective. Them trying to take what the defense gives them and them trying to do things that aren't there. I don't like non-predictability in my fantasy unless it potentially could work out from a positive perspective. Parker Washington remains a little bit fantasy relevant. Did have a fumble lost at 62% snaps. 3 targets, 2 receptions, 27 yards. Did have enough touchdown. So I'm definitely thinking that there might be some fire there from a dynasty perspective. But going into the fantasy playoffs, trying to catch something that that I can't predict ahead of time with the drop in opportunity is not something that I would be doing going up against Baltimore. I'm going to have a little bit more appeal against Tampa Bay, but I would expect like Zay Jones and Calvin Ridley to get home that game. And then Carolina, who knows? But again, like I'm just not going to be chasing that. I would like to have seen him take over that Calvin or Christian Kirk role this week, and it just didn't kind of happen. Evan Ingram, I watched some of his snaps this week. 12 targets, 11 receptions, 95 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's being used like a real tight end now, a little bit more than I've seen him in the last couple of weeks. So he may not be a gadget guy. If I have my Evan Ingram shares, I would be very happy to be rolling him out, thinking that I don't have a guy that could, give me these like ugly weeks. He may be the overall number 1 in this offense to finish the season off, going down the line. Defensively, again, there's a slight downgrade because of the inconsistency of the offense. Baltimore, I wouldn't be rolling him out. Tampa, I think, is an okay play. Carolina, I definitely would to finish the season off. So again, if they're available, stashing them for the rest of the season is something to be paying attention to. The Jets, and this is what everybody's been looking forward to because of the Zach Wilson apology channel that this has turned into. So Zach Wilson goes out and does 27 of 36, 301 yards, 2 touchdowns to go with another 3 for 12 on the ground. Did have a fumble lost in the Jets blowout of the Texans. So I don't have any news on Aaron Rodgers. Again, they're talking about like they don't necessarily have any idea what's going to go on with Aaron Rodgers. Theoretically, he could be back next week. Been cleared by medical staff from what I've seen. Brees Hall, 62% snaps, 10 for 40, another 9 for 8 for 86, and a tug on the ground. So again, this is one of those things going into fantasy playoffs. Sometimes you just have to trust the player over the matchup. Sometimes you have to trust the player over the situation. And hopefully, after me saying I don't care, I don't trust the guy, he goes out and gets it done. Does have plus matchups against Miami and Washington in week 15 and 16 before hitting Cleveland in week 17. And that would be realistically, if I'm rolling Brees Hall at this point, outside of just like sticking with him as my RB2, what he does in the next couple weeks is going to really influence whether or not I'd be comfortable rolling him out in the chip if I can get myself there. Garrett Wilson goes back into that volume-based RB2 role. 14 targets, 9 receptions, 108 yards. I don't think that massive spike week's going to be there because of Zach Wilson, but the next 2 weeks, I would feel very, very good rolling him out. He did get a little bit shut down against Miami, but again, that was Tim Boyle in week 12. And then Washington, they just absolutely, might as well be playing out on air that game, theoretically going forward. So I would feel really good rolling Garrett Wilson out. I would actually say that I would probably be more hesitant rolling Garrett Wilson out if Aaron Rodgers comes back than Zach Wilson at this point, because at least there's the theoretical outcome of what Zach Wilson did this week. If Aaron Rodgers comes back, we have absolutely no idea how good he's going to be, how rusty he's going to be, and how much teams are going to attack him coming off the Achilles. The defense, now this moves the defense back into, hey, maybe I shouldn't be rolling them because of how bad the offensive looked, to probably going to roll them against Miami. And then Sam Howell is going to be a turnover machine. And then Cleveland's probably not going to be good. So overall, like, I do think that they are a safe floor with upside play as a defense after this good outing by their offense. All right, moving on to the Lions. As I click around the wrong stuff. All right. Jared Goff was 20 of 35, 162, a tug, 2 picks. I've talked about Jared Goff a lot. I think that there's a lot of problems from a fantasy perspective with Jared Goff. He's not necessarily really good at football. This doesn't mean he's bad. He's just okay. Never probably going to be in a game where they need to lean on him to score multiple touchdowns. Doesn't have a lot of passing in him. Denver right now does not look like a good play. Neither is Minnesota. Neither does Dallas. If you're streaming Jared Goff, like, I would probably be going someplace else. I just don't know how to predict these matchups and where the touchdowns are going to come from. David Montgomery in this game was at 35% snaps, 10 for 66, another 3 for 3 for 19. And we can go back and we can kind of look at the game script between him and Gibbs. If we're worried about it, got to go hunt them down. So for the most part, the Bears were able to take control of this game in the second half, and that would screw with the overall usage of the two players. So Gibbs did have the majority of the work, 63% snaps, 11 carries, 66 yards, and a touchdown to go, and then 4 for 3 for 16 and a fumble not lost. So the big thing with this is, if these games get into a script where they are behind and they're going to be throwing more, we can expect more Gibbs. But again, now we're back in that situation of trying to guess overall, game flow, which is very difficult to do, other than trying to just predict overall usage of a player, how much they're going to be on the field. Let's see. The Sun God was at 9 targets, 3 receptions, 21 yards. Again, this kind of bothers me, not just from a matchup standpoint, going forward with these teams. If I can pull this up, schedules. So the reason why this would tend to bother me is now we're trying to guess overall how good the offense is with the season on the line. And let's see, where is the Lions showing how prepared I am? Probably just be easier to click on them here. So Denver, Minnesota, and Dallas. And then now we're trying to be in a situation where we're trying to predict how the game's going to work out, so we can start trying to figure out where the opportunities are going to go. And if these are our lower scoring games because they're playing better defenses, the offense is inconsistent, and we just don't have an identity for where their opportunities are going to go, especially the high volume ones. Like, I would just generally downgrade all these guys going into my playoffs. That doesn't mean bench them. It just means, like, I don't know how much I can lean on them to win me anything after getting me there. Jameson Williams is maybe the only other wide receiver that I would look at. He's at 58% snaps, only 1 target. And I think he's just a massive dart throw. Maybe there's better guys out there. Josh Reynolds, who did get the receiving touchdown, was only at 55% snaps. If you're worried about Sam Laporta, he was at 86% snaps, 6 targets, 2 receptions, 23 yards. Again, he's a tight end. That bothers me. That doesn't bother me as much, other than like the general inconsistency. I just don't like that going into my playoffs. The Lions probably aren't something I would be chasing. Denver's look better. Maybe Minnesota, I'd be rolling them out in week 16. Probably not going to be rolling out week 17. So again, like outside of stashing them, so someone doesn't roll them against me, I don't know how much I would have faith in them. All right. The Packers on Monday night. Jordan Love, 25, 39, 218, 1 tug, 1 pick, 1 fumble lost. I don't have a lot to say about that. I think that he is still a low end quarterback 1 to finish the season off. Some guys are just not going to get it done every week. That's why you pay for those premium guys. And even in case of the premium guys, Josh Allen may be the only guy that gets it done a majority of the season. He didn't even get it done week 1, if I remember correctly. So I do like the matchups that he has going forward for at least the first opening round of the playoff and the semis against Tampa Bay and Carolina. I don't particularly like the Minnesota matchup right now, but depending on if I have a different guy to pivot to, that's something the future me can deal with. Running back wise, A.J. Dillon was the guy who led the backfield, 53% snap, 15 for 53, another 3 for 2 for 25 in the passing game. Again, the problem is like how much we're going to get, red zone opportunities. I don't got any news on Aaron Jones if he's going to play. The other guy, Patrick Taylor, in this game, 47% snaps, 4 for 30, 2 for 2 for 22. And again, that doesn't help me from being able to decide whether or not I should cuff him or not. Kenyon Drake was active, but he didn't play at all in this game. And that's another thing to be a little bit worried about. So the only guy I would probably be trusting in this situation would be AJ Dillon is probably like a low end RB2 at this rate. On defense, I have they do have a little bit of interest going forward. Again, sometimes I'm not worried about like 1 week. Maybe Tampa Bay because of the situation, Baker Mayfield. Probably Carolina, I would feel pretty comfortable with them being rolled out against, and maybe Minnesota. So even though they disappointed against the Giants, this was something I think I talked about already. I just don't know. Some of these teams are not going to give opposing defenses the opportunity to win the game. And, a guy like Tommy DeVito, where you could just sit there and go like, hey, play conservative. We'll lose, but we're not going to lose ugly. That's a little bit different than like Baker Mayfield, where it's like, we'll lose, but you're going to make it as ugly as possible. So I could definitely see that's like kind of an apples and oranges type of discussion. That's kind of what's going on with Carolina. They've just been losing ugly. So like if I rolled them out and I got burned against the Giants, I wouldn't necessarily say like I got to go a different direction. So I don't care that much about the Panthers. Like they still don't look good. They're not particularly fantasy relevant at all. Bryce Young, 13 of 36, another 3 for 40 on the ground, a fumble lost. The only guys that kind of have some fantasy value, Chuba Hubbard, 78% snaps, 23 for 87, 2 for 2 for 9. Miles Sanders, interesting. Wrong guy. Miles Sanders. So he was down to 21% snaps, 10 for 74. That's a little misleading. You can see over here, he had a long of 48. So overall, like 9 for 20 something. So like that's what he did. So like I'm not particularly interested in that. If I'm the Chuba owner and I'm really desperate in a deeper league, I would be cuffing Miles Sanders to Chuba. That's about it. Passing wise, I got burned. I was wrong. Adam Thielen, 81% snaps, 7 for 5 for 74. You see a fumble not lost. Again, going to be high end wide receiver 3, low end wide receiver 2. Very little upside to him at this point. Jonathan Mingo, this would be the only interesting thing is 89% snaps, 9 for 2 for 22. And of this 159 air yards. So there's still the possibility that we're chasing that the opportunity is going to come home with a spike week off of Jonathan Mingo. I don't particularly like him as a prospect. All I'm doing is I'm chasing him from an opportunity standpoint and hoping that if I'm in that desperation mode, I can roll him out there and those air yards will at least land a little bit. That's something for me to look at other than just going like, well, like, yeah, so that's just what my thought process is on that. And that's all we have to talk about when it comes to the Panthers. Let's see. Patriots on the Thursday night game. I believe Bailey Zappi is going to get the start again. Again, I don't think he's particularly good at football, and I would not be trying to roll him out in a negative matchup against KC, the Broncos, or the Buffalo Bills to finish the season off. No news on Ramondre Stevenson as of this point. Ezekiel Elliott is going to remain in that volume based role, limited opportunity to score touchdowns. I would still imagine that he's going to have the best pathway to lead the team in receiving on a week to week basis. I could definitely see Kansas City going like, we're just going to take away Zeke and you can do something else. So I would have my expectation muted that he's going to get this 30 opportunity game again and actually score a touchdown. But that's what it's going to look like for him. So like volume based RB2 is where I would be looking at with very little upside. Overall, little interest here with Juju. 98% snaps, 6 for 4 for 90 in the passing game. Be advised that the whole of the wide receivers core was banged up in this game. Tywan Thornton was at 95% snaps, 5 for 3 for 17. So that's just something to monitor with the Douglas and Devontae Parker being out. The rest of these guys, Jalen Rager in this game was at 35% snaps. So like if some of these wide receivers come back, I don't know. Like, it's already not going to be a good offense. It's already not going to be a good quarterback. I don't know how much I would be chasing Juju going forward when some of these other wide receivers come back in the mix to cut into the target share. Again, Hunter Henry, I think this is a little bit of a fluke. He was at 88% snaps, partly because all the wide receivers are out. Again, low efficiency plays, 3 for 40, 2 touchdowns. Again, how often are the Patriots going to get into the red zone against Kansas City is my question. How often are they going to do it again against the Broncos? We can go back. I know this was a really ugly game when the never mind. Thought process went someplace else for a second. So anyway, and then Mike Gesicki to finish this off, he was at 33% no targets. So again, like they're not even going to they didn't even bring in their big wide receiver tight end with all the guys that were out. And they basically in the game against the Steelers were able to jump out because of Mitch Trubisky not being good at football. And then they just choked him in the second half as the Steelers tried to come back. And that was about it. Now, defensively, because of how inconsistent that the Kansas City Chiefs have been, this would be something that I would think about being cute and rolling the Kansas City Chiefs or the Patriots out against the Chiefs. But overall, I think it's going, if anything, this matchup is going to make the Chiefs less valuable instead of making the Patriots defense a better play. All right, Raiders in this one. So I click all the wrong buttons. So this game, a really ugly game against Minnesota. They Aiden O'Connell finished 21, 32, 171, and did throw an interception. That's about it. I can definitely see that they're not necessarily going to make him do anything special. If there is this potential for a spike week, and again, I don't know where you're going to be rolling out Aiden O'Connell. It would be against the Chargers this week. I don't think he's going to have a particularly good matchup against KC. There's a good chance for the Raiders offense will do better against the Colts in week 17. This is a bigger issue when it comes to Devontae Adams. But for the most part, right now, we're kind of trending towards Josh Jacobs not playing this week. DNP, like I said, I would be a little bit more interested in Zamir White because there's a possibility that they're going to go, hey, go be a bell cow for 1 week. We want to see what we have next year because of the Josh Jacobs contract situation. My expectations would be Amir Abdullah is going to get the passing work and probably a little bit of the rushing work. This offense is probably not going to be good. The only reason why I think the offense might actually be okay this week is because of how bad the Chargers defense is. And again, never trust Thursday night football. The biggest news out of all this going into the opening round of the playoffs is I would not want to see a volume based guy with good athleticism going up against a bad defense in the opening round of the playoffs, even if I wasn't going to roll him out. Wide receivers wise, Devontae Adams, 98% snaps, 10 for 7 for 53. I think there's a better chance that he bounced back against the Chargers. And then we're going to have a conversation week 16 if we get there against the Chiefs moving forward. Jacoby Myers was at 98% snaps, 6 for 5 for 25. Again, if there's a possibility it gets home, it's going to be this week. I could definitely see him having more value next week if they decide to take away Devontae Adams. And then outside of your good old Dynasty leagues, Michael Mayer at 94% snaps. This is partially going to be based upon uh, the low volume, low efficiency offense that the Raiders are running. 2 for 1 for 14. So he's going to be a guy we have more conversation about next year going into fantasy redraft than he's relevant right now. The defense, if Max Crosby is a go, and last time I checked, he was a DNP today. But again, this is a Thursday game, and we can't really take that. We have to take that with a grain of salt. They would be a high, a high value play this week against the Chargers if they're available, at least for no other reason than to block if you're not into actually rolling them out this week. Trey Tucker, kind of the wide receiver that we've been following all year, he was down to 6% snaps. So, like, outside of maybe a dynasty draft, I'm not really interested in him. All right, Rams. Matt Stafford. He was at 23 of 41, 3 touchdowns. And again, this was a matchup that I was like, I don't think we should be rolling him out, and he got it done. So he would be, if he's available in any leagues, he would be like probably the top overall streamer going up against this Washington matchup if he's available at all. Let's see. Kieran Williams was at 90% snaps, 25 for 114, 4 for 3 for -1. Did have 4 red zone carries. So again, if we're trying to go apples to oranges into this next week against Washington, him being able to have that positive regression back to the mean, so he had actually score touchdowns, it's going to be on the table this week. Cooper Kupp, he was 10 for 8 for 115 and a touchdown, and that goes along with Puka being 94% snaps, 8 for 5 for 84. Tyler Higbee was out. Hunter Long, the next tight end, he went out with an MCL right here, and then they placed him on the IR. So if you're wondering about this Davis Allen, the rookie out of Clemson, who I don't know anything about, so this is how he got his opportunity. Higbee went out, Tyler Long went out, and then he gets the opportunity as the third guy. 71% snaps, 5 for 4 for 50 and a touchdown. So how much I think this is going to happen again? Well, there's a possibility if Higbee's out, the passing volume might be here this week against Washington for him to be a low end streamer. So there's a possibility of that. But again, he's going to be the number 3 overall in this offense behind Cooper Kupp, Puka, and then Kyron. And then it's going to be him. And then we're also trying to chase another opportunity in the red zone. So I don't know how much I would have faith in that in the playoffs outside of like really deep leagues. Royce Freeman's the cuff. He was the only other guy. He was at 10% snaps. Defense does have some appeal. Remember Washington with Sam Howell, turnover machine, sack magnet. The Saints have not been particularly good on offense. And then New York, the legend of Tommy DeVito, if we get to that point, and he starts melting down a little bit. Let's see. The Ravens, the team that the Rams played this week. So I don't have a lot to say about Lamar Jackson. When you're wrong, you're wrong. Ugly game, game that predicted to be an ugly weather game. And inconsistent Lamar Jackson. He goes out there. He's the number 1 fantasy guy this week. 24 for 43, 3 touchdowns, 1 interceptions, 11 for 70 on the ground. So let's see. Gus Bus was at 28% snaps, 6 for 15. Keaton Mitchell was at 33% snaps, 9 for 54, 2 for 1 for 8, and a red zone carry. All right. So the big news out of all this, when we worry about this, like Justice Hill was at 42% snaps in this game, 2 for 1 for 12. So what this tells me is Justice Hill is the guy that they trust to do the dirty work. They don't trust Gus Bus, and they don't trust Keaton Mitchell to do this. So Gus Bus has a role to be this downhill runner, particularly in the red zone. Keaton Mitchell has a role to be like the change of base, explosive back. Justice Hill is going to be the guy that's just on the field. Now, that hurts the other 2 backs because they just can't get that opportunity to do things when he's not on the field. So overall, again, with this offense, like I probably feel better about the floor of Keaton Mitchell. Gus Bus is going to have the opportunity to have multiple weeks where he scores touchdowns in the red zone. If that happens, Keaton Mitchell probably has the most overall upside if he can score outside of the goal line area. And that's about it. Wide receiver, Zay Jones, he was at 97% snaps, 10 for 6 for 60 and a touchdown. Overall, I think he's going to be more of the number 1 in this offense just from a short area throw type of thing. Odell Beckham, I talked about this in Chasing the Dragon, 54% or 53% snaps, 10 for 4 for 97. He had 194 air yards. Now, why I'm not entirely interested in chasing him down is because Rashad Bateman did go down from this 74, 79, 80% snaps to 47% snaps in this game. he was at 4 targets, 2 receptions for 24 yards. Bateman had 125 air yards. So what it almost looks like between OBJ and Bateman is they're sending both these guys vertically on every single play, and they're basically like uh, giving each other a break to catch their breath from running down the field to catch these air yards. So like there's still an opportunity that Bateman's going to get home on a particular week, and OBJ is going to be very volatile, even though he got the 10 targets. Just kind of worked out that way. Your guess is as good as mine when it comes to that. The other thing that I have in all this to kind of get an idea of how this passing game is working out for the Ravens, Nelson Aguilar still at 60% snaps, 5 for 5 for 32. So again, he's on the field. Zay Flowers is on the field. And then Bateman and OBJ are having kind of this niche how they're being used in the offense. Isaiah Likely, if he's available, he would be a priority pickup for me if in my league. 79% snaps, 7 for 5 for 83 and a touchdown. One of them was a 54-yarder, so he is an athleticer type guy. So I think he's only a 4.8 guy, but anyway, he may be the overall most valuable asset in the offense. Outside of Lamar Jackson, just because he plays the tight end position. The defense is a weekly play with the gigantic asterisk that I don't know how much I would be trusting this matchup in my semis. They are a good defense. The matchup says I should go a different direction from a streaming standpoint. All right, the Saints. So ugly game overall from a fantasy perspective. Derek Carr is just has suffered 3 rib fractures this year. That's what it says. So overall, Derek Carr 18 for 26, 119, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Kamara was at 54% snaps, 12 for 56, a touchdown, another 3 for 3 for negative 11 overall. And again, outside of good old the Devils leagues with the PPR scamming, that doesn't really matter. But he's going to have like the elite side rushing or receiving floor that we look for. Jamal Williams at 44% snaps. He's the cuff, 11 for 43 in the target. We did have a James Robinson sighting. I think he signed on at the practice squad today for the Saints. Again, I think this is more James Robinson being that guy that they can trust if Jamal Williams goes down to be the backup to Alvin Kamara. Again, it looks like the league is changing away from a thunder and lightning or change of base pack to a back that they want to get the football to, and then a dirty work back that they can trust. And I think that's what Jamal Williams is. I think they can trust Jamal Williams when Alvin Kamara is not in the game, and that's why I think they went out and they signed James Robinson. If Jamal Williams comes down, James Robinson was known as a good pass blocker. Chris Olave was at 65% snaps, 5 for 4 for 28 in a tug. Rashid Shaheed was out. A.T. Perry, 62% snaps, 1 for 1 for 44. That was all air yards. So if you're chasing the high upside with Shaheed being out, A.T. Perry's the guy to go to. Lynn Bowden, this is another one. I don't know how much he's going to have value this year, but I could definitely see something that we're going to be talking about maybe in the future. So 77% snaps, 4 for 4 for 24. So he's on the field, and now he's getting opportunity. This is kind of how he was used in Kentucky. I could definitely see him being one of the more valuable slot receivers next year. May have a spike week. The only thing we're trying to guess the week where they're going to have enough volume in this offense for it to matter, maybe week 16. So, if you're in deeper leagues, like 20-man leagues or something like that, and you're really chasing this like week 15 against the Giants, stash maybe for week 16, but the opportunities are there. It is trending in the right direction. So I could see it happening if they're just trying to get him the ball this year. So Taysom Hill was out. I really don't care about Juwan Johnson if you're into that type of thing. I'm done dealing with his tomfoolery. Week 15 against the Giants, their defense, I don't know after last week if I would necessarily this would be a good matchup. Theoretically, they did get it done, the Saints defense against the Panthers. I don't know if I would necessarily want to be chasing that against the Giants. I could definitely see me going, yeah, that was the right play on Monday morning, or I could also see on Monday morning going like, hey, Tommy DeVito's not bad at football. And then the Rams, I probably wouldn't feel good, on the road rolling him out. And maybe I could get away with rolling him out at Tampa Bay in the finals, but I should probably be looking for a better matchup. All right, Seahawks. So Geno Smith was out, and this is a little bit interesting overall from not a real life perspective, because I do think Drew Lock is a downgrade from Geno Smith. So Geno Smith was out, and he's not a quote unquote pun intended lock to return in week 15. So Drew Lock, I don't necessarily think downgrades overall the toys in Seattle. I don't necessarily think he's better than Geno Smith, but again, that's not what we care about. We care about whether or not he can be keep the toys on track. And again, against Philadelphia, Tennessee, he might even be streamable if you're into that type of thing. Uh, Kenneth Walker, and this is the bigger problem with how inconsistent the Seahawks have been. Kenneth Walker, 56% snaps, 8 for 21, another 5 for 4 for 33 in the passing game. In a game where, like against San Francisco, where we definitely could see it being ugly, I could definitely see Philadelphia being a shootout like it was for them against the Cowboys. So be advised on that one. Zach Charbonnet came in 42% snaps, 9 for 44, another 1 for 1 for 4. And again, at this point, these guys look like they're cannibalizing each other. I would probably say they're Walker is a boom bust RB2, and Charbonnet is a low end RB2 at this point for the rest of the season. So DK Metcalf did get ejected in this game. 90% snaps, 5 for 2 for 52 and a touchdown. I could definitely see that being consistent for the rest of the year. Tyler Lockett, 81% snaps, 6 for 6 for 89. And again, this is just something that he does where it's just like I should bench him, and then you benched him and then he got burned. Jackson Smith and Jigma, kind of sticking around there, 71% snaps, 7 for 4 for 25. I'm just not sure outside of Lockett and Metcalf how much I would be really wanting to roll any of these guys out. Probably from a running back perspective, how inconsistent everybody has been. I would probably you'll be rolling out Kenneth Walker with a certain amount of confidence that I know he's at least going to get opportunities. I can't say that about everybody else. And probably the same thing with Charbonnet if I'm in deeper leagues. Defensively, before I move on, Philadelphia, probably better matchups. I can roll them out because Jalen Hurts is a turnover machine. Tennessee, Will Levis is a rookie, a little bit of a turnover machine, and Pittsburgh probably could still be rolling them out. So again, if I'm in one of those leagues where I don't have the roster flexibility, I could be rolling out Seahawks for the next 3 weeks. Steelers, Mitch Trib will remain the starter. He will continue to be fantasy relevant from a streamability standpoint, if for no other reason than his nimbly bimbly. You see here that on Thursday night against the Patriots, 8 for 30 and a touchdown. So like he is going to be a higher end streamer against the Colts, probably even Cincinnati, maybe to finish the season against the Seahawks. Waiting for Kenny Pickett. He has more fantasy value than Kenny Pickett because of that rushing upside. 22, 35, 190, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And I could definitely see that he goes out there, puts up another 20-point week, and then gets benched this week after they lose the Colts. Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, I'm not going to get in their numbers too much. 57% snaps, 53% snaps between the two of them. Overall, again, they're just not going to be a good offense. The receivers, again, not going to be good. You're chasing that. The biggest thing with Muth, 69% snaps, so that's up. And then 7 targets. So overall, between Pickens, Deontay, and Muth, not a good offense. Mitch Trib is a downgrade from Kenny Pickett. So Mitch Trib has more individual fantasy value than rolling him out with rolling his toys out, because I think he downgrades everybody. Teams are going to take away the run. They're going to force Mitch Trib to beat them with his arm. He's going to be very inconsistent when it comes to doing that. That's going to downgrade definitely Pickens. Deontay might be able to stay in that volume-based role, and Muth may have a limited ability to score touchdowns. Almost falls back into that tight end dependent type range when it comes to tight end. So I don't even know if I'd be rolling him out versus some of the other options. The Colts, Gardner Minshew is a turnover machine. I don't know. I probably wouldn't be trusting this against Jake Browning at this point. And Seattle, Geno Smith can be a little bit of a turnover machine. But again, if the offense downgrades, if the offense is an overall downgrade, that means the defense is going to be a downgrade by default. Texans. I'm getting a little tired here. All right, so CJ Stroud is in the concussion protocol. You can see here, he was 10 for 23, 91, a fumble not lost. And again, I bring this up because like I didn't even dawn on me to check my CJ Stroud shares. I just rolled them out, didn't overthink it. Burned me in a predictive matchup that says, hey, we should bench this guy. So that's why I say, like, even with your Patrick Mahomes, some of these guys, it's something that at least has to cross your mind when it comes to whether or not you're going to be rolling these guys out. Davis Mills is going to be a definite downgrade to all the toys going forward if he's the guy this week in a matchup against Tennessee, which would be an okay matchup overall for Stroud. Let's see. Devin Singletary, he was at 57% snaps, 13 for 65, did get home with a touchdown, 3 targets. Damian Pearson, this was overall a bad script. He was only at 14% snaps, 4 for 9, and then 1 for 1 for -2 in the passing game. And then we have like Dare sighting 29% snaps. I think this is mostly because it's turned into a shootout, or not shootout, a blowout late in the game, and they just weren't rolling anybody out. So right now, Nico Collins is out with a calf. Those vacated targets I could definitely see going to Noah Brown. Noah Brown in this game was at 66% snaps, 5 targets, but Noah Brown had 106 air yards to go along with those 5 targets. So he is going to slot back in that Nico role. Unfortunately, the Texans have shown that they will, just go a different direction if teams take it away, and the Jets were good this game. So overall, in the passing game, the next guy up overall was Robert Woods, was at 71% snaps, 3 for 1 for -2 in the game. Let's see, John Mechie, that we've kind of been trying to track this guy coming back from cancer, the former first-round draft pick, 50% snaps in this game, 5 for 1 for 6. So again, like maybe we're following all this stuff going forward. Xavier Hutchinson was the other guy, the rookie. He stepped in at 73% snaps, 3 for 2 for 15. So like if CJ Stroud is out, I'm not touching anybody in this offense more than likely, even though it's a potentially a plus matchup against Tennessee. Overall, the only other guy I would be interested in with Dalton Schultz being out right now with a hamstring would be Brevin Jordan. Did kind of do what we thought he was going to do, 75% snaps, 3 for 3 for 35. And since he's a tight end, I can feel less. It's a less risky role to be rolling out Brevin Jordan. But if Nico Collins is out, I'm not rolling it. I'm probably not rolling out anybody. Maybe I can look at Noah Brown as a high end boom bust guy. If Stroud's available, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to be following with the Texans this week overall. If you're into that type of thing, defensively, they went from being like the guy that we wanted to roll out to the one that we're like may not be rolling out again this year. Tennessee right now, I wouldn't be rolling this defense out if they couldn't get it necessarily done against the Jets, and the Titans just got it done against the Dolphins. I just don't know what I can predict about that outcome in Week 15. Again, Cleveland may not be the role. It could be a very conservative script in that game, and then Tennessee again in the finals. I'll have to figure that out after I see the next couple weeks. Monday Night Football. This was a very interesting game. I will kind of pat myself on the back and say I did kind of call this. Didn't kind of work out the way that I thought it was going to work out. So this went from a pretty boring game early on until a very interesting one later on. The Titans were able to come back and score, especially when they were down like 2 touchdowns with like 4 minutes left to go in the game. Will Levis turns around 23 for 38, 327, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 1 fumble lost, another 4 for 15 on the ground. Possibility that he is streamable against Houston week 15, week 16, and again week 17. So be advised about that. Like this matchups going forward in this one. Derrick Henry down to 48% snaps, 17 for 34, 2 touchdowns, 2 for 1 for 17 in the passing game. Tajay Spears should be a priority if he's still available. So we can't guess scripts. And this is the biggest thing with Tajay Spears was the script. 66% snaps, 7 for 29 on the ground, 8 for 6 for 89, did have a fumble not lost in this game. So that's a script thing. But the main thing, just like a Chase Brown for the Bengals, is having this guy out in the wild so everybody else could potentially get him if the Derrick Henry goes down to be a league winner. And you got to remember, like I did kind of talk about this, I think the offense does shift if Derrick Henry goes out and Tajay Spears is going to be much more involved in the passing game. They're going to be probably less of a neutral script run team and more of a neutral script pass team if Derrick Henry goes down. Overall, let's see, moving on to DeAndre Hopkins. 63% snaps, 12 for 7, 124, and a touchdown in this game. So he's going to stay in that volume-based range for the rest of the year. Treylon Burks was at 65% snaps. That was behind Nick Westbrook Akine's 89% snaps. And then Chig was at 68% snaps, 6 for 5 for 46. So the only other guy from a Chig standpoint is, depending on how this offense goes for the rest of the year, there is a possibility of a Chig spike week. But again, I would feel better about the opportunities and the situations of some of the other tight ends in my league than trying to chase this upside. But at least it's trending in the right direction, probably more so from a fantasy perspective or a dynasty perspective than redraft at this point. And then the defense comes back on the table as a possibility, especially if CJ Stroud's out week 15 against Houston, 16, and then again with week 17. They do have a good defensive line, and again, pressure equals sacks, sacks equals turnovers. That's what we look for from a fantasy perspective. So as long as the offense can be serviceable, they can allow that defensive line to go get us our points from a fantasy perspective. Vikings to finish things off, because we're all done here. So you see that Josh Dobbs got benched. Nick Mullins is going to start week 15. Jaron Hall would be the only one I would be a little bit interested in rolling out. I think Nick Mullins overall is probably a slight upgrade to the toys because there's less volatility to them. I don't necessarily think he's good. I just don't think that he's bad. Tyler Chandler is probably a priority free agent pickup in your waiver wire. Where's Alexander Madison right now? Gets a DNP on Tuesday. So if we go look up the schedule for week 15, they have a Saturday night game, so there's one less day to find out with when it comes to Madison. So I would be picking up Ty Chandler. I think Ty Chandler has the greater ability to win me a week than Alexander Madison does. He has more of the athletic profile, but whatever's stopping him from getting on the field, that's one thing that is going to bother me a little bit. But he would probably slot into that mid-level RB2. Okay offense, okay opportunity. That, may not a lot of risk involved. So I definitely would be counting on like a 40-degree day at a minimum from Ty Chandler going into this game. Justin Jefferson is another thing to be worried about in this game. Limited on Tuesday with a chest. He left the game. Again, I already talked about this with Jordan Addison. I don't even think that Jordan Addison is necessarily rollable at this point because of the downgrade in the offense and Justin Jefferson being back. If Justin Jefferson doesn't play, he goes back into that wide receiver 1 role. And then I think he's usable potentially as a low end 2, because Hawkinson's going to be the number 1 in this offense. That's about all I got. And then if you're really, really hurting in this, and what's his face, Justin Jefferson's out. KJ Osborne was back to 71% snaps, 7 targets. If you have to go chase that. Defensively, they're not the worst defense in the world. Cincinnati right now, I would not feel comfortable rolling him out. Maybe Detroit, maybe Green Bay, but if I'm chasing, the only week I'd be thinking about was maybe Detroit because of the possibility of a turnover machine quarterback. But there are probably better places to go from a matchup standpoint. All right, recap wise, Ty Chandler is a priority free agent. Tajay Spears shouldn't be on your waiver wire. If he is, you should go pick him up. Let's see. Steelers, nobody. Seahawks, nobody. Saints, nobody. Ravens, Isaiah Likely, if on the off chance he's available. Rams, Matt Stafford has probably got the best possibility of being the streamer if you need a streamer this week. Zamir White is a priority free agent pickup, the running back for the Raiders, with the expectation that Josh Jacobs is out and he's going to have a plus matchup against the Chargers going forward. Patriots, if you're really desperate, you could go chase Juju Smith-Schuster, his 98% snaps, 6 for 4 for 90, but that's a bad Patriots offense, be advised. Cuffing Miles Sanders to Chuba rest of the season. Jonathan Mingo did have a 159 air yards in his disappointing week 9 or week 14 matchup. The Packers. Oh, I left this out with the Packers. No one's going to be paying attention to this. Totally left all this stuff. So Christian Washington was out with a hamstring. Romeo Dobbs, 82% snaps, 7 for 4 for 32, had 53 air yards. Jaden Reed was at 69% snaps, 10 for 8 for 27, 4 for 38, a tug on the ground. So he's a priority guy that I would be picking up, Jaden Reed. Dontavian Wicks, he left with an ankle, 63% snaps, 6 for 2 for 20. He did have 60 air yards. Samaje Toure came in at 26% snaps. He would be a dart throw against Tampa Bay. Good matchup. if Watson's out and Wicks is out. 4 for 2 for 22, and then 56 air yards limited. Tucker Cross would be a priority at 100% snaps, 4 for 4 for 64, 32 air yards along a 48. That spike week we could maybe guess is going to happen during the playoffs. Uh, Lions nothing, Jets nothing. Defense is back on the table. Will be used for the Jets. Giants, Tommy DeVito may be good at football. Wandale Robinson would be a guy I'd be interested in if I was the Giants or for the Giants. Eagles, Dolphins, Cowboys, Redskins. Antonio Gibson and Chris Rodriguez with the expectation that B-Rob's going to be out with a hamstring. Rashee Rice is probably going to be a league winner as a wide receiver. Probably not too interested in CEH or McKinnon other than a block if Pacheco's out. Quentin Johnston does have some sneaky wide receiver 3 appeal for the Chargers. Cuffing Michael Carter, James Carter for the Cards. Kind of expecting Michael Wilson may be a usage flop with Hollywood Brown in his heel. Let's see. Kareem Hunt, Pierre Strong pickup if expecting that maybe Jerome Ford misses some times with a potential hand injury. Not interested in Cedric Tillman anymore going forward. See, Broncos, Javonte maybe an RB1. And I think that's about it overall. Chase Brown, if he's available, shouldn't be on your wire. Don't trust the Bears backfield. And I think that's about it. So the streamers for defense, Raiders, check on Max Crosby. Colts, right now, maybe the Titans if Stroud is out. Atlanta is probably going to be a good play against Carolina. And then the Chiefs are probably the number 1 defense against New England. So I think that's about it when it comes to everything. And I'll see you guys on the Sit Start Griff show.